Yes, welcome to episode 4 of That's a Big Twinkie. This week we are focusing on the beautiful, fantastic Splendendos sequel to Ghostbusters entitled, coincidentally, Ghostbusters 2. So join me as we take a reminiscent view of Ghostbusters 2.
Stand by. That's a big Twinkie. That's a big Twinkie.
Yes, welcome back to this episode of That's a Big Twinkie. That's a Big Twinkie. That's a Big Twinkie. I should do my own theme song. Yes, this episode we're talking about Ghostbusters 2, the thrilling, exciting sequel to Ghostbusters from 1984. This was the sequel done 5 years later, 1989, where you had a brand new villain, you had returning cast members. Obviously, you had Ernie Hudson, Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, Harold Ramis, Annie Potts, Sigourney Weaver, Rick Moranis, and then you had like new like members, not members, but you had a Figo the Carpathian, which the voice was done by Max von Sydow, sorry, as you all know, as Ming the Merciless. And he was also in Escape to Victory with Sly Stallone and Michael Caine. You also had Peter McNichol, who played Janusz Polhart, the head of the department. So when Ghostbusters 2 come out, it had more like fanfare than the original. You had more merchandise released because they teamed up with Coca-Cola again. And you even had a world premiere. And to have something have a world premiere, that means it must have been, like, they wanted it to be big, they wanted it to be massive, but it was. Because if you attended the world premiere, you was entitled to, like, they gave away free gifts and that, like the plate. You had a plate that was engraved. You had a program where on the program, if you turned the dial, you turn from like it turned into the Ghostbusters logo. Yeah, have a look here. Yeah, you see? Brilliant. Yeah, so like I said, so with Ghostbusters 2, it brought new weaponry, it's new equipment. You basically had the globe scope, where I'm demonstrating it now. This is all 3D printed, the props, because they never really released one. They used that in the street when they went to investigate Dana, when the Oscar, like, the buggy stayed in the mid. The buggy was driven to the middle of the street, and that's basically where the Ghostbusters first went. And as they was crossing the street, you basically had cars coming left and right, and then you had the famous line from Peter where he goes about, Galloway, hey, Galloway was scientists, and they go, you right, you on the meter. And that was when, like I said, you basically saw the globe scope. You saw the CAD meter. You basically had so many new equipment stuff. Like, one of the main parts was obviously the slime blower that they use with a positive slime, because they have to have something to spray the inside of the Statue of Liberty. But yeah, it's like I said, with Ghostbusters 2 brought more merchandise in one way. They had more promotion, obviously, with like Coca-Cola. Um, you had many things released for Ghostbusters 2, more than you had with the original Ghostbusters. You had cinema cups, you had promotional cups, you had, you know, like here, you've got a little bum bag of Ghostbusters 2. You had a kid's belt of Ghostbusters 2. You even had the official 1990 Ghostbusters 2 calendar, which, like I said, you even had them team up with Fujifilm, and with like a reel with a Fujifilm in its special packaging, you come with a little like die cast Ecto Wondermobile. But yeah, so it's like I said, Ghostbusters 2 was fantastic. It brought, some people don't really like it. Some people think it's inferior to number one, but then you got your fans of it that prefer number two over number one. But in my opinion, you want to got number two, you want to got Afterlife, you want to got Frozen Empire, you want to got the real Ghostbusters. If it wasn't for number one, the original Ghostbusters started everything. So that's my favourite film, is Ghostbusters 1, then it goes Ghostbusters 2, then Afterlife, and then Frozen Empire. But basically, the plot of Ghostbusters 2 was primarily made up. The Ghostbusters were out of business. They were sued by all city and states because of what happened in number one with the top of Dana's building, where they blew the 3 floors off. And then they all went their own separate ways. You had Ray start his own bookshop called Ray's Occult. Egon went back to being like a scientist and studying like human like emotions and stuff like that. Then you had Peter have his own TV show called The World of the Psychic. But remember, with World of the Psychic though, right, you basically had the end of the world will be in June 16th in 2000 thingy, right? Sorry, my bad. I'll cut back. You basically had February 14th, Valentine's Day, in the year 2016. Sorry, my bad. I got confused. I got confused. All right, I got confused. Yeah, because the information was fed to her by this alien. She met him at a bar. They had a couple of drinks, and she thinks he transported her back to the mothership, and the hotel room was made up to be to make it look like, so he made it look like a hotel room on the mothership. But then this is the thing. Then obviously you had psychic pets, and then Peter got the mayor comes down. He tries to have a thing in the mayor, but then the mayor's a right hand man, which is played by Kurt Fuller. Won't let Peter see the mayor because he's up for re-election, and then Peter says that they were stuffed by bureaucrats like him, and then we found that Kurt Fuller was obviously the antagonist of the film. He couldn't stand the Ghostbusters, but then it's because of what happened to Baby Oscar. They got Dana talking to the Ghostbusters again when she first went to Egon and asked his opinion. He asked if he could bring Ray in on it, and she said not Peter because of their history. Then it cuts to Ray's occult, and Ray's got his glasses on, reading a book. Then Egon is trying to look for different books. Then Peter comes in. The paths to fortune, and then Ray squeezes gets his ears squeezed by Peter to tell him who finished it, Dana Barrett, and then Pete says, "What, my Dana?" And then they end up at the Dana's apartment where Pete finds out that Dana's partner left them, and that Oscar was named after a hot dog. You poor man, you poor man. Then when it goes to the playroom, they were scanning and they found out that Egon only had half a slinky until he straightened the slinky, which it depends what kind of slinky, if it was metal or it was plastic, because you get the curly thing, and it was just. But that's what led to him to the middle of the street where the pram stopped, and over night time they were trying to dig a big hole in New York City. Then it cuts to the police. Then it cuts to Ray going down the shaft with a new slime scope, and they find a river of slime. And then as Ray's coming up, he knocks a piece of pipe that lands on another piece of pipe that turns to be electrical, and it blacks out the city. Then that's basically when Janos goes to Dana's apartment to find out she's okay. And then, well, what was me? You cut to the court scene where you see Winston again. You see Winston again talking to the guys on the table. I think that was the last time you saw Winston. I'm not sure if he was in the chairs behind them. But the first time you saw Winston in the film was basically at the beginning with the children's party with Ray, and then the little boy was basically Jason Reitman at the party, who says, "My dad thinks you're full of crap, and that's why you ran out of business." And that was baby Jason. And then you get to see Lewis, where he says he got his law degree at night at school, and Ray says, "That's good, Lewis. We got rested at night." And Ray collapses tired. Then on the desk you had like the proton packs, you had the slime that was recovered, the mood slime. Then you had Peter in the dock, which was he was controlling Lewis with the questions, and obviously he had the answers. Then you had the female thingy. Then as everything was, then the judge was getting angry, and then the slime started bubbling. Ray noticed it, and then he questions to Egon. Then as it went on, obviously it got to the point where the slime exploded and his Scaleri brothers popped out. Yes, these little fellas. Tony Scaleri and Nunzio Scaleri. Basically, the judge sentenced them to, they gave him the chair. So that's basically what got the Ghostbusters working again, and got them in the limelight again. And that one line from the courthouse where it goes, "Red is gold, we be fast and they be slow." And the other one is the classic Do Re Egon, and Peter gave him a dirty look. Yeah, and like I said, and then it goes on, and Peter goes to the museum and he sees Vigo, and then he meets Janos. But then obviously the security guard at the front of the museum's favourite show is Bassmasters, apart from the world of the psychic. And then Peter makes out he's going to draw a little kitten because he's missing his little kitten. And then it goes on, and then Dana says that she feels like creepy because it's like the painting's looking at her. And then they turn around and Janos is talking to the painting, because earlier on he was semi-possessed by Vigo to get what he wants, because he's looking for a child that he may possess. And then it went on, and it cut out to like say Dana was giving Oscar a bath, and then the water turned into slime, and then you had the bathtub monster who tried to grab Oscar, but Dana grabbed Oscar, and then they fled to Pete's apartment. And then they went to check out Dana's apartment. Then they went back to the museum, all of them, and that's basically where you see Ray with the globe scope again. And you had Peter taking pictures. Obviously, they're the pictures that, as Ray and Egon had developed, that's basically when they caught fire in the firehouse, and the door was possessedly locked. So Ray was calling for Winston. Winston bought a fire hydrant, extinguished the flames. The firehouse is safe. But then they decided they need to go underground to find the river of slime. But then, as they go underneath for the river of slime, they was going through the old train line, the old pneumatic railway system. And then obviously you had things trying to stop them, where you had like zombie heads pop up, and for some reason they was all like spooked and that. But then they heard a train coming, and then they saw this light. And then Ray, as it was coming for him, Ray and Egon disappeared, but Winston stood there right in the middle of the track just as the train was coming, and then it went straight through Winston, and Winston, and then Egon appears, and he went, "That's all, Rowie. Did you catch a number plate?" "Sorry, I missed it." And you should have seen, like, obviously, you should see, like, Winston's face. And trust Egon to say, "Did you catch the number plate?" on a spooky locomotive. Then Ray come, he scared him, and he found the hole, and then Winston fell in. A little bit, though. If you hear, that was left in the film, as Winston fell into the slime, and they was trying to stop him from falling in, you hear Ray shout Ernie, which is obviously Winston's real name, which is the actor Ernie Hudson. So then Ray and Egon followed him, and then they popped out in front of the museum. Dana and Pete was having a meal. So, but as the three of them got out the manhole, they all started. They was about to like attack each other. Then Egon had the idea, so they took the suits off, and then they realised it was a slime that was making them angry. Because earlier, when they had the slime in the fire station, they were performing tests on the slime. You know, like angry, happy. Even Egon was sleeping with the slime to see if they could get reaction. Then they decided on the dancing toaster. They basically done an experiment where they put slime inside a normal toaster on top of a pool table. And then they put on higher and higher the song, and it started to jump and everything. It's like here, you've got not a replica, but it's a fan-made prop of the slime-covered toaster. And it's like I said, they wasn't fully out of the firehouse in Ghostbusters 2 because they all had all like little side hustles. But then they got arrested because of the restaurant manager. Then like, I don't know, in your long johns covered in mood slime. They didn't like that. But then it went on, and they went to see the mayor, and the mayor wasn't happy. It's every New Yorker's goddamn right to be angry. You shouldn't tell them to be good or angry. But then the aide, Kurt Fuller, Adam admitted to the psychiatric ward at Parkview Hospital. So when everything was going down, there weren't no Ghostbusters. As the montage come on, you basically had the Titanic arrive. You had the like the skeleton ghost. You basically had the woman's fur jacket come to life. A nibit for you in that scene where outside the cinema where the lady's fur jacket come to life. Her husband. In the past, that actor played Santa Claus, and he was also in Kirstie Alley's TV series as her dad, as the chauffeur. Anyway, as it goes on, you know, the Titanic arrived. You had the skeleton. You had another monster come between the archway. And then in a deleted scene, you basically had Lewis Arskey's cousin, in others, to get the Ghostbusters out of the psychiatric ward, which was played by Eugene Levy, but that was cut. But before that, you had Dana go back to Pete's apartment, where you had Lewis and Janine fondling and fucking about on the sofa. Dana went in to check on Oscar. Oscar was up, but he wasn't. And then Janine said they fed him pizza, and then he went right off. Then it went on later, and then Dana was sitting on the chair. She felt a breeze. Then she went to check on Oscar, and Oscar was gone. As she looks out the window, Oscar was on the ledge of the apartment, outside the window, on the ledge that high up. And as Dana climbed out, she called for Lewis. And as Dana climbed out, she saw this like ghost come. This like ghost like come with like a pram. And the ghost figure was Janosch. So Janosch picks up baby Oscar and put him into the pram and then sped off to the museum. And then as Dana left, Lewis said, "We've got to get the guys." And then it shows with like Dana arriving at the museum and going into the museum, but then as soon as she enters the museum, the doors close and then slime covers the building, which leads us into the montage of like the Titanic arriving, better late than never. And then it goes on where the mayor decided that enough is enough. He was speaking to his friend for over 4 hours last night, so he decided that's enough. Somebody get me the Ghostbusters, because he went to the window and he saw like the clouds all forming over this one spot. But before then, he would find his aide, because his aide said that he had him committed to Parkview Psychiatric Ward, and he was doing it in his best interest, which he wasn't. So he had him fired, and then they saw the sky. And then the montage was like, Lewis was with the Ghostbusters, they was dressing up, they was getting ready for work. Then they got to the museum, they tried to blast it with the proton packs, but it didn't work. Then, cut a long story short, they had an idea, so they went to the Statue of Liberty. They decided, that was the first time you saw the slime blowers, and they started to coat the inside of Liberty with the good mood slime. And they also had obviously to get reaction, they use a cassette player and played Higher and Higher. But then they also made this little control panel out of a vintage NES joystick arcade controller to control Liberty. Pete was in charge of that, so then obviously you had the slime start up, and then you had the Liberty walk through the river onto the streets, everyone cheering, yeah, and then Liberty crushed the car. Ray blamed himself. Then they said the vibrations will shake her. Should have patted her feet. And then they said, they don't make Nikes in her size, Ray. And then it got to the point where Vigo was in the process of transferring his soul into Oscar when Libby come over the top, started to dissolve the slime. which made the Ghostbusters come down on the harnesses, and Pete goes, "Happy New Year! Don't you resist? This is Vigo!" Oh, and you by the wrong tree, and then, "Would you hold in, please?" So Winston and Ray hosed Janos. Janos went down. Then Dana picked up Oscar before this to take him off the plinth. Then they fought Vigo. Vigo possessed Ray. Then they had to hose Ray down. Then they basically took on Vigo. Vigo trapped them, but then they got loose because of the people outside cheering and being happy, which turned the slime good. And as Vigo was holding baby Oscar and saying, "Now we become one," that's basically when it started with the people outside. And he was about to drop Oscar, but Pete was able to let itself go quick and grab Oscar before he fell to the floor. Then obviously they managed to put him back into the painting. They used the slime blower, they used the plant packs to destroy destroy the inside of the painting. Then they managed to get Ray up, they got Janos up, Pete and Dana kissed, and he moved Oscar out of the way. But then as they went to the photo, the picture turned into them like all like saintly and that, with like baby Oscar in the middle. But one of the good parts was when Lewis dresses up as a Ghostbuster, and then he's running for the bus to get to the museum, and on the bus it's Slimer. So he decides to get on anyway because he first meets Slimer in a firehouse, and Slimer's eating his lunch, and then he gets scared and they both go either way. Lewis falls over this set sofa. But like I said, there's so many bits on Ghostbusters 2 that made it a worthy sequel to the original. So many things come out of Ghostbusters 2. You basically had like a rap soundtrack performed by Run DMC. You had Bobby Brown. You had DJ Fresh. You had so many compared to the original soundtrack. It's like I said, with Ghostbusters 2, they had so much promotion, so much merchandise. Obviously, you had records, LPs, yes, and cassette tapes. Like I said, but if anyone can tell me the locomotive number plate, then please write in and let me know. But yeah, so, but I remember, this is me personally, the first time I ever saw Ghostbusters 2 was on pirate video that my cousin had, and he would let me borrow it every week or something, and I would watch it. And I know there's bits in Ghostbusters 2 on a pirate version that I've never seen on a home release. I've never seen it at all. And it would just be great if, you know, if that video, that VHS still exists out there. But yeah, so like I said, that wraps up this edition of Ghostbusters 2. I know I didn't get on, I know I rabbited it on, but there's so much stuff with Ghostbusters 2. Obviously, we're not finished talking about it, but for this part we are. Remember, I've still got the competition going on to win that Ghostbusters 2 jacket that was released when the VHS was released to promote it for Video Trend. It was RCA. I've got that competition going. It's a free giveaway. All you need to do is like and subscribe to any channel. Me YouTube, me TikTok, me Facebook group. I've got merchandise available. I've got patches. I've got stickers. I'll be at Ghostbusters Day this year. I'm flying in from the UK. But next week's episode is centered around MCM Comic Con, where the voice of Egon from the real Ghostbusters, Maurice LaMarche, will be there. The Southend-on-Sea Ghostbusters will be there, which most of you probably know that they had parts in Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, so I'm hoping get like an interview with one of them. And so next week's episode will be MCM Comic Con. So you see like costume, you see everything. Like, just tune in, see the MCM special. You won't regret it, trust me. But yeah, so this is the end of this episode. Obviously, this is just a little bit of Ghostbusters 2. This ain't everything. I will put stuff up, you know, like merchandise they add, parts, everything like that. Don't worry, this ain't the end of it. But tune in next week for the MCM special. And for now, I will say keep busting. So long.